These are some low-key upgrades that I've made to my truck to make camping way easier without turning it into a full-blown overland rig. If you have a truck and you like camping, you might find some of these worth doing too. The truth is, you don't need to spend $10,000 on a rooftop tent and molly panels to enjoy a weekend camping. These are some upgrades that you can do to your truck pretty easily and pretty affordably without making your truck look like it's trying too hard.
Gear up and get outside.
This video is sponsored by Devos. They make some really cool area lights that are great for camping. More on them in a minute. So I used to just use a tonneau cover over the bed of my truck, or I'd even just throw a tarp over top of all my camping gear when there was too much to fit under the tonneau cover, but it never quite cut it for when I needed extra space, like taking the whole family with a bunch of fun stuff or extended camping trips that were gonna be more than a weekend long. I've never been really keen on the hard toppers, although I went down that rabbit hole too, but they just cost so much daggum money. But the fact is that most of the time, I neither have anything on the top of the bed of my truck, nor do I want anything on the top of the bed of my truck. But I don't have a whole lot of space at home to store stuff. So enter the Flated air topper. Now, before I get too deep, let me fully disclose that Flated gave me a huge discount on this thing. I was prepared to buy it and pay for it at full price because ultimately, after shopping around, this is the one I wanted to give a whirl. But because I make videos on the internet, they offered to sell it to me for cheap and I couldn't say no. But regardless of how much I did or didn't pay for it, it ticked a lot of the check boxes of what I was looking for. I've been using it now for 6 full months and I'm ready to tell you the pros and cons. But first, let's flash back to when I first received it so you can see how this thing sets up and what it's all about. So the first thing I did was unbox it all and look up how to set it up. They had a nice little QR code on the box, and that linked to a first-time setup video that was super helpful. I just followed that video step by step. Laying these out in the sun so they kind of get loosened up and supple. Recommended. It came with a pump and everything you need to install it, which was super nice. I unrolled the topper and it was kind of hard to unroll, just like a brand new stand-up paddleboard. It's made of the same kind of material, a lot of PVC. I attached the included pump to the first valve. There are actually 2 valves total. These pumps work just like the pumps for stand-up paddleboards. And it's also nice because there's a pressure gauge right on the pump. And you're only supposed to pump these up to about 5 to 8 PSI, which isn't a lot. Next, I lifted it onto the truck bed, and I was able to do this by myself. It doesn't weigh nothing. It is a little bit heavy, but only about 60 pounds, and one guy can easily do it by himself, as I did without too much trouble. And that is a whole heck of a lot lighter than a hard shell truck topper. I left a small gap between the cab and the cap and tried to align the sides as best I could. I realized you got to put this window on before you press it up against the back of your window. I suppose you could even leave that off. That's what I like about it. If I want to have Gertie back there, I could open the back window of the cab and pull this off. Next, I crawled into the pickup bed to install the included cam straps that simply attach to the cargo hooks that were already installed in my truck bed. There are 6 straps, 1 for each corner and then 2 for the middle. And for the middle one, since I don't have a hook down there, they include a couple little S hooks that just hook right onto the inside edge of my truck bed. I installed the side windows. They just use Velcro, but it all folds in a way that will shed rain off the topper and not inside, so that seemed pretty clever. Then I installed the rear flap with Velcro as well. I suppose a guy could even leave that back flap off in some scenarios if you wanted. Lastly, I put the included Velcro cam strap around the top of the tailgate, which is where the rear flap is supposed to attach, just to keep it down. All in all, it took about 45 minutes to take my time and figure it out that first time, but ever since it goes a lot quicker. There are some clever design elements about this air topper that just make it really functional. One is this little rain guard. It's just a little flap that hangs down here kind of loose, and it sheds the rain off of the topper and down the side of your truck instead of getting pooled up there on the edge of the bed of your truck and then ending up inside. So far, I've never had anything leak inside. And while this is a little loose, it hasn't flapped around and made a bunch of noise whatsoever. You've also got a bunch of D-rings on the outside. You might think, well, what's that for? Well, the fact is this is rigid. Unlike a soft topper, the alternatives I was looking at, this thing is solid, so you can actually put more cargo or things on top. These windows are pretty clever. They're just made of this vinyl material that's clear. Now they're tinted on the sides and on the back, but the window panel that's between the front and the bed of your truck is clear vinyl. You can take these off as you want. It's just Velcro, and there you go. I also think it's cool that there's screen mesh right here. So if you've got dogs that ride in the back or something like that, we'll bring Gertie in here sometimes. That's also nice if you're gonna sleep in the back of your truck sometimes for a little ventilation. This is pretty dirty, and that's because I actually use it. To put it back on, it's pretty simple. You just line up that Velcro Try to get it straight. And they are labeled left and right so you don't get it in the wrong spot. So on the back here, you've got this flap. There is that Velcro strap that goes along the rim of the truck tailgate. And now that can vary, I think, a little bit depending on which model, but maybe they're all the same. I'm really not sure. There are different sizes. I'll get into that in a minute. You've got a zipper on either side. These are nice, hardy YKK zippers. And then it just flaps up. Now, when it's hot and this thing's really pliable, it'll just hang out up there while you load and unload your gear, which is nice. But when it's cooler and it's a little stiffer, it might flop down. But they do have D-rings inside here and even on the top where you can strap that down. And they include some of these extra little Velcro straps to do so. Honestly, these are pretty chintzy and not my favorite solution. I would rather just use a little bungee or something like that for this. I think they could improve upon that, and we'll get to some other improvements they could make. When it's clean, which it's not right now, you can see through there well enough to back up and do everything you need to do, as long as you don't have it packed to the brim, which I have, and which is awesome. Carrying on, here's something you wouldn't do on a soft topper, but up top, you have quite a bit of capacity. It's even a little bouncy. I weigh over 200 pounds, and I'm on here just fine. This thing is pretty darn solid. You could put up probably 2 kayaks side by side or 1 canoe. They even have D-rings up here where you could strap, and then actually 2 back here, where you could strap even their air cargo carrier. So if you want more cargo on top of this, but only sometimes, you could put that up top. You also have these nice big webbing handles that are more for when you're moving it around when it's not on the truck. But this is something I couldn't do on a soft topper. In fact, it'd probably be pretty fun to sleep up here under the stars sometimes. Haven't done that yet. Now it's pretty comfortable inside this thing as well. You've got the screen on the insides, but you can actually pull those off as well if you wanted to for some reason. You've also got a couple little mesh pockets here. So I have slept in here before, and it was nice just to stick my headlamp or my phone or quick access things up there that I needed. D-rings as well throughout the inside for more cargo attachments, I guess, or you could even create a little net to hang stuff at the top, maybe fishing rods or things like that. That's a good idea. I should do that myself. Anywho, the reason I chose to get this over other things was largely because of the convenience. It's lightweight, it's very portable. In fact, I didn't show you, but here's the bag it goes in, and it's kind of like a burrito sack. You can wrap it all up in there, pump included. And you can just set that on a shelf in your garage. It's not going to be a big ordeal to take this on and off. It serves the function of a topper, but without all the downsides like the super high costs of a topper, the inherent unease of use. It's not cumbersome to put on and take off and store. And even when compared to the soft topper or the fast top or other soft top caps like that, it's rigid, so you can still put something on top, which I think is a big bonus. Compared to those as well, because it's rigid, you don't get it flapping in the wind all the time. And I've read and heard complaints about that with the soft topper, and that was one of the biggest deal breakers, because I was just about to pull the trigger on one of those. I'm sure it's still a great product, and I know a lot of people love that. So no shade on it. Those are just the things that I was weighing, and that's kind of why I landed on this. I feel like the air topper is just more versatile. When it comes to price, the one I have costs $1,599 retail price. If you compare that to the soft topper for my pickup, that would only cost $1,069. I should also mention that this one is what they call the full short cap 54. I have a short bed pickup. It's a 5.5 foot bed on a 2018 Ford F-150. It's called the Cap 54 because it's 5 foot 4 inches in length. Now I could have gone with a full short cap 56 for this truck, which would have had a 5 foot 6 inch length cap, just a hair longer, 2 inches than what I have. But I got the short one after speaking with a flated rep, and they recommended that might be the trick because I do like my tonneau cover. And while I haven't done it yet, I'm hoping that I can actually leave my tonneau cover on here, roll it up towards the front because I've got the roll up kind, and then have enough space to bring that cap just back enough to where it's behind that tonneau cover and still not sticking way out the end of over my tailgate. So that's the hope. I haven't proven that. I'll let you know if it works, or if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments and I'll try to follow up with you on that. But I can also say for this short bed on the Ford, the Cap 56 would have worked just fine as well. Now for some of the downsides of the flated air topper, because there are some. One of the first things I noticed when I installed this is that the sides kind of bow out towards the rear end. And that's because there's nothing that holds it between the two along the back, which I'm glad for, because if there was a strap or something to try to pull those ends in down here, it would be super obnoxious to get into the cargo bay. So the only real difference that makes is that it just looks a little bit wonky, but functionally it doesn't matter. You know, there's no leaks. It's not causing any problems inside with my cargo. It's not falling off. It's not flying off or flapping in the wind. But for those of you that really care about the aesthetics of your pickup, that might bother you. The same can be said for this little rain flap. Because the back splays out by probably a couple inches compared to the front, it's just always hanging out there. Not a deal breaker, but cosmetically, it's not the best look. But this right here is what I think is the weakest part of the design that I would really like to see them improve, because I think it's just not good. And that is how this flap attaches to the back of your tailgate. Now, all tailgates are shaped differently. The thing about the Ford F-150, at least my model year, is that the top rim here is actually slanted slightly down. And so they include this Velcro strap. But on the front end, you've got this Velcro and it just kept wanting to slide up. So what I did is kind of a jerry-rig moment, but I just drove some little tiny screws into the plastic on the top of my tailgate just to hold that Velcro in place. And all that does is keeps the edge of this flap over the back of my tailgate. That way when it's raining, the water's running off and not down into my tailgate or into my cargo. And plus, this just doesn't really line up perfectly. You've got these little loose ends that you're supposed to kind of put over here and go under. I can see a lot of people being bothered by the sort of, I don't know, crude, almost DIY feel of that little design. It's like, oh shoot, what do we do with this fabric flapping around? Well, how about some Velcro on a strap? Not the best. The other thing that has annoyed me is these zippers. Zippers are great until they're not. And zippers and dirt don't get along. And when you live in Idaho and you go in the desert and you get that really light, fine, fluffy dirt, just dust, powdery dust, it just cakes these up bad. Now, I just recently cleaned these zippers and lubricated them, but that is the downside. Because you have these zippers, you're going to have to maintain them. They're simply not going to work all the time, and it's going to take some effort to keep them clean. I'd like to see them do something like use magnets, where there's a flap that just magnets to the side and takes care of itself, and if it's dirty, you're still functional. But zippers, they keep it closed, but when these got really caked up in dust, I couldn't even open them. I had to wait till I got home to scrub it off. Otherwise, I was just about to bust through it. It was really kind of making me angry. So heads up, that's going to be an issue. And while I'm not totally pleased with how this whole rear end works, it is functional at the end of the day. And I guess that's the takeaway. Two other things that are minor inconveniences for me are that you can't lock this, and if you've got a short bed pickup like mine, then it may not be the best for camping because your legs are gonna stick out. What I did is I just laid down my tailgate, and then I actually took my canvas tarp and I laid it over top and draped it over the tailgate. That way I didn't get frost or dew or rain or anything on my feet down there. Not a deal breaker, because most of the time I'm not sleeping in my pickup, I'm sleeping in a tent. So it may not be super cheap, but if you wanna keep your truck bed versatile, it's genius. One of the biggest annoyances when camping out of your truck is lighting. Often I get to camp late. It's dark and I need to set up. So this summer I started using the Devos LightRanger lanterns. These are area lights and they do two things that I love. They get the light above you, above your head and above your eye level, and they illuminate an entire area. It's like turning lights on in a room instead of just shining a flashlight in your eyes. This video is sponsored by Devos, but I started using their lights well before they were a sponsor, and they sure make camping a whole lot easier. These are the three most popular LightRanger models. There's the 800, the 1200, and the 2000. The number corresponds to the lumens that they output, which is just a measure of how bright a light is. So the 2000 is going to be brighter than the 800. But the 2000 is also significantly more expensive than the 800. The 2000 is $250, and that comes with the light, the charger, a really nice carry case, and that really durable tall tripod. The 1200 is $175 normally. It's their best seller. This is probably going to be the right light for most campers. Then you have the 800, which is their more budget-friendly model at around $100, and it goes on sale sometimes for around $80. And that's a pretty good deal considering you get that tripod and the light. These are all rechargeable, reusable. You're going to use them for years to come. So it's going to be cost effective in the long run. At least that's my opinion. Besides the height and the brightness differences, you do get some bells and whistles on the 2000 that you're not going to see on the 1200 or 800, like a smartphone app that you can control it with. It also has different color settings that are built right into the light itself. You can go from white to amber to red. The 2000 was actually the first light I got, and I used it at a family reunion where we were trying to light up this whole area, this big lawn where we had a badminton net set up and a bunch of games for the kids. And they were running around till midnight in the pitch black, just having a great time. And that wouldn't have been possible without something like this. While this one only emits one color, that bright white, you can get one of their accessory kits and you just put this little shell over. This is for the 1200. And that's going to change that white light to more of a red light, which is not going to damage your night vision as much. And it lets you look at the stars, but still see around camp without fumbling on things. This one also has this kind of yellow filter, or you can get your amber color that way. Any of those aren't going to be quite as harsh as that bright daylight white in the middle of the night. Wow, that's a lot of rhyming words. They make this one for the 800 too, where you can get the red and the amber. Charge time from a dead battery is going to be about 5 hours on the 2000, about 4 on the 1200, and a little bit less on the 800. If this is fully charged on the 1200 and you put it on the full brightness all the time, it's going to last a little less than 4 hours. This one I feel like has lasted longer for me, but I usually don't run it full blast unless we're just having a good time. But normally I've got it turned down just to extend the battery life. And if you milk it just right, it's going to easily last you a whole weekend on a single charge. But you can get plenty of accessories with these things. I even have a solar panel that goes on top of this one that allows it to charge during the day. So with that, you can essentially just go forever. Now, another great feature about any of these is that you can pop them off the tripod. So that makes them not just a little mounted area light, but you can take it off that way and use it as a lantern. In fact, this 800 even comes with this little magnet attachment. You could easily use a carabiner and hang it up inside. So if you're sleeping in the back of your truck, that's fantastic. Or if you want to take it in the tent. A cool thing too that you can do on any of them is adjust the brightness just by hitting the power button another time, or it actually directs the light in certain ways. So this way, you keep clicking on the power button and it'll turn off one side at a time. That way you don't have it directly in your eyes if you don't want it. This one will do that too. Turn it off. Click it a couple times, and that's how you get your kind of high, low, medium setting. Same on the small one. Now, what's really nice about all of these, but especially the 1200 and the 2000, is that adjustable height. Getting it up there does a couple things for you that are really nice. One, it gets the light out of your eyes, so you're not going to be blinded by that bright light while it still illuminates the campsite, and that gives you that kind of lit room effect. The other thing it does when there's a lot of bugs out is it's going to keep the bugs up there and not in your face. Keep any of these at the back of your pickup so that when you arrive to camp, it's one of the first things you pull out, especially if you arrive late. And if you do a lot of shoulder season or winter camping like me, you have a lot of dark hours in the day. And when it's light, that's usually when I'm out doing fun stuff. And when I'm settling down for the evening, just even to have my dinner, it's already dark and you need some light. So these make a fantastic solution for something like that. And if you're worried about the wind blowing these things over, you can adjust how much these feet are spread out. So a wider stance, as Larry Craig knows, is going to give you more stable footing. And you also have these holes right here in the feet that you can stick the included stakes in to really anchor it down tight. But if you're still worried, Devos does claim that they're durable enough to withstand a fall from their tripod height. So you should be all right. What I like about these is how fast they set up and how you always have a spot for them with that tripod. You just throw it out there and you're good to go. But if you need to, you can pop that light off and you can take it inside. It just makes them a very versatile camping light. However, if I had to nitpick, I'd say that they're a little bit annoying to get on and off the tripods. The little push button thing sometimes gets caught up, especially if your fingers are cold or the equipment's cold. I do love the app for the 2000, but I'm glad you don't have to use it because I hate being dependent on a smartphone app when you're out in the woods. You can do almost everything you can with the app just by pushing buttons on there, and they're not super cheap, but you can use the code OE10 to get a 10% discount at checkout at Devos website. I'll put a link for that below. Thanks to Devos for sponsoring this video and for making camping lights that actually work and make camping a little bit easier. It's basically daylight on a stick, but unlike your buddy's headlamp, it's not blinding you in the face all the time. I still got a fair amount of Boy Scout in me, and I like to be prepared when I go out on a camping trip. And one thing I always bring with me is tools. But the problem is, where do you put all that stuff? Normally, mine was just kind of clanking around in the back of the truck, or just in a regular toolbox that I throw back there, or it's under my seat in the cab of my truck and messing up that whole place. Now it's all very well organized and easy to reach without crawling into my truck bed. I simply pull on that lever and swing out my little swing out truck bed toolbox. And I love this thing. You can find these on Amazon. You can find them on realtruck.com. I'll put links for this and anything else I can find that I'm showing you today in the description below. These are made specific to your truck model. However, it's only the bracket that's probably different, because all those holes on the bracket are going to be pre-drilled so that you don't have to drill any new holes into your pickup bed. The really nice thing is you just pull this little lever and it releases that latch and you can swing it out. And when you're done, you just swing it back in and it should be lined up so that it just latches right back into place, and then it's really solid in there. I paid $200 for this on Amazon. I like the idea of this because it just fits in that wheel well, and that little part in the back is usually a spot that is not very efficiently used anyway for gear and other stuff when I go camping or on whatever the adventure is. So I liked how this fit there. I didn't want a big truck box that sits in the back and takes up a quarter of my short bed. The molded plastic is obviously made to fit in the wheel well, but it has this tray as well where you could put little parts in if you're working on something and you don't want to lose a bolt or whatever. It also locks. So it's got this latch here, which right now it's latched. You just twist that a quarter turn and it opens. But you do have the option of locking it with a key, and the key and lock come with it. You can also lock the toolbox to the bracket in case you're worried about all your stuff being stolen. I love how it's modular, where you can actually take this out. So you can just lift this whole thing, it comes out, you can move it out of the way, or if you got a trip or you're just going to the ball game and you don't need it, you can just set that whole thing in your garage and easily put it back on in 3 seconds. It's really easy and portable in that way. Now, I've been using this also for the whole summer, and it's pretty darn dirty right now. It's been a really good addition to my pickup. It just gives me a little peace of mind that I have all the stuff I need in there when I'm out camping, but it doesn't clutter up my cab or the bed of my truck, so it just makes it much more convenient and tidy. You do need to order this either for the passenger side or the driver side, or both for that matter. So it could even be a nice little gear box if you just wanted a place to store all your camp kitchen gear conveniently. I have been impressed with how well it holds up even on bumpy roads. I've gone on some really rough terrain in this, and this is still on there. It doesn't seem to be breaking the plastic on the end. It didn't bend or mess up the brackets at all. The only thing I have noticed is as I've weighed it down, because I got quite a bit of tools in there, this isn't going to hold a ton of weight. However, out on those rocky roads and things, it's still hanging on. So I've been impressed with its durability so far. You just want to be careful about not weighing it down too much. I also put some of the heavier stuff towards the back, so it's kind of sitting right on that hinge. Or if you got a lot of tools, you might want to get one for either side and split the weight. For me, this is just better than a big cumbersome toolbox. It's a more efficient use of space. I like things to be compact and minimalist where possible, and this fits that bill. And for the months that my topper wasn't on, it was exposed to the dirt and the sun and the rain and everything else. And rain hasn't gotten in there. There is a little weather gasket here. Sure gives me a little peace of mind when I'm out camping. Another challenge I've thought way too much about is how do I make the bed of my truck very utilitarian. When I want to haul leaves or grass or stuff to the dump, or I want to fill it with rocks or firewood, I don't want to mess up some fancy bed liner or mat or something that's permanently installed. Enter this little bed rug. This is one of those carpet style bed liners, and it's pretty simple and reasonably cheap compared to a lot of other bed liner solutions. The most similar one I found for this that's currently on Amazon is about $230. But I bought this truck from my dad and he had put this on. I'm not sure what he paid for it, but it's already several years old, probably as old as the truck. I've also got a rubber bed mat I put down sometimes, and sometimes I pull them both out and I just have it raw. It just depends on what I'm doing with the truck. But I prefer this bed rug for most of my camping trips. And specifically, I like the bed rug that doesn't go up the walls of your bed. I don't think that's necessary. This one just lines the bed, but it also goes over and up the tailgate. The reason I like the one that comes up the tailgate is because when you're loading stuff in and out, it makes it easier to kind of set it on the tailgate and slide it in. And the fact that this style covers this gap between the tailgate and the bed, that helps prevent some of the dust from getting in. I just use Velcro to secure it to the bed of the truck so it doesn't slide around on the metal. There's a couple of Velcro strips taped to the bed, and then also on the corresponding corrugate under this mat, because this mat actually is also corrugated underneath and just that kind of foam stuff. So that gives you a level surface. That level surface is also nice for when you do want to sleep back there. Now, I put a pad down and I sleep on the pad still, but that just gives you a smooth surface. It also makes it a little cleaner and nicer to move around in there at night, and it's not nearly as cold as bare metal. It's also pretty easy to clean. You can pull it out and shake it out. You can vacuum it. You can hose it down and let it dry out in a couple hours. I haven't found that it holds moisture or mold if a little rain gets in there somewhere. That hasn't been an issue for me at all. And it's super easy to remove when you want to take it out. But then it only takes a few seconds to put it back in, even sliding it under this toolbox. And perhaps most of all, as I get a little older, it's just nice to have something soft under my knees when I'm crawling around in the bed of my truck. Now this thing isn't perfect. You know, those Velcro attachments aren't perfect. It doesn't stick to everything just right. It's not a perfect molded fit, but you know, it does the job that I want it to do, and it's convenient. And that's why I like it. A few more little bonus items I just want to give honorable mention to. One is these rock straps. Now I have these in my truck all the time now. I'm not going to do a full review on these here, but these are just amazing. There are two parts. There's this bungee edge, there's a buckle in the middle. You run this loop around a cargo hook in your bed, and you do the same with the other end. You fasten them together, and then you tension them like that. That makes it super secure, more secure than a regular bungee cord, but you're not risking anything just flipping off and hitting you. They sell these in pairs. There's 3 different sizes. These are the bigger ones, and I use them all the time. I also always have a canvas tarp in my truck on any camp out. They're very versatile. You can use them to do a makeshift pop-up shelter, or just to keep yourself dry, or to throw gear down on at the campsite just to keep it out of the mud while you're moving it to the tent and the kids are tracking through. Use it as a floor mat in my tent, a doormat outside my tent, drape over the back of my pickup to sleep inside. There's a million things you can do with them. So this is a camping staple that is always in my truck. None of these are flashy or complicated, but they've all made my truck that much more useful for camping. If you've got a simple truck mod that you love for camping, drop it in the comments below. Maybe I'll steal it for next time. Now gear up and get outside.